In today's video, I'm going to share with you guys my top 5 most favorite Christmas cookie recipes. I usually make all of these every year and my family loves them. I hope it gives you some great inspiration and that you enjoy this video. We are going to start out with some easy and delicious pistachio cookies, or as I like to call them for my kids, Grinch cookies. So to a bowl, I'm adding 1 cup of softened butter, and I'm going to get this nice and creamy. And then I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of powdered sugar and incorporate that. And then because this dough becomes quite dry and crumbly, which it does for this recipe, I'm going to go ahead and add in 1½ teaspoons of almond extract. I'm just kind of eyeballing that, give it a little moisture there so it'll help it come together a little bit more. And then next, I'm going to add in 1 3.4-ounce package of the instant pistachio pudding mix. And now we are going to mix these ingredients until they are well incorporated. And once I've finished getting this batter all together, I'm going to take some of my green food coloring gel and put a few drops in. You can put as many or as little as you want, or you can you can omit that step altogether. I just like these cookies to be a little extra green. And then once I've done that and mixed that all through, I am now going to add in my flour. It's going to be 1 2/3 cup of all-purpose flour, and I'm just going to add this in a 1/2 cup at a time. It just makes it easier to incorporate, and you don't have flour flying around everywhere. Once that is all well mixed in, we need to chop up some maraschino cherries. So I have what is about the equivalent of a 1/2 cup of cherries that I chopped up, and it's very important you take a wet paper towel and sop up any extra juice so that that doesn't run in your cookies. You want to have the beautiful green cookies with just, the flecks of the red from the cherries. Then we are going to carefully fold the cherries into the batter, and just take your time doing this. Like I said, you don't want the colors to run together, so just take a spatula or a wooden spoon and get those well incorporated. Next, you want to wrap your dough in some plastic wrap and just pop it into the refrigerator. You really only have to do it for 15 minutes, but if you're making this ahead of time, of course, you can do it overnight, and then just make sure you bring it out, I would say at least a good 30 minutes before you want to work with the dough. So this dough is going to be really soft initially, so you do want to pop it into the fridge just to stiffen it up a little bit so your cookies don't completely spread out into mush. Then we're just going to shape our cookies into about 1.5 inch balls. I just did it with my hand, or if you have a cookie scoop, you can do it that way. Fill up my tray, and then I just took the palm of my hand and kind of pressed them down a little bit more flat. And then these are going to go into a 350-degree oven for about 9 to 11 minutes. Once the cookies have finished baking, you want to bring them out, let them cool, and finish cooling them on a wire rack. And once they have cooled down, we can add on our powdered sugar. Now, these cookies taste just like Spritz cookies. If you've ever had those, literally the flavor profile is the exact same, but with a fraction of the work. We absolutely love these cookies. Okay, this next recipe is one of my absolute favorite cookie recipes, and I guess it's really not a cookie recipe, it's more like a pastry. This is a Hungarian pastry that I grew up on. I'm half Hungarian from my father's side, and these are called Kifles. These are so delicious and rich and just not overly sweet. I can't explain it, but I really hope you will give these a try. So to the bowl, I'm just adding 4 sticks of butter. Now I actually added 2 sticks of butter and 2 sticks of margarine. Sometimes it just helps the dough to kind of roll out easier instead of using 4 sticks of butter, but you can certainly use just 4 sticks of butter. I've added 1 8-ounce cream cheese, and then I'm going to end up adding 4 cups of flour. And that's it for this dough. It's a very simple dough, a recipe, but I mean, I'm telling you guys, it is so tasty. So after I get all the flour in here, I'm just going to you have to work this with your hands. There's really no other way to do it to get this to come together. You're just going to work it with your hands until all of it is completely combined. and it forms a nice big dough ball. And once you have all your dough combined, you're going to put that in the refrigerator either overnight. I would say at minimum for 4 hours to get it good and chilled and kind of let all those flavors meld together. Um, and then once we let the dough set, I'll show you what we're going to do next. So while our dough is chilling in the refrigerator, we're going to start on the first of two fillings for our Kifles. One is this poppy seed filling, and what I have here is a coffee slash spice grinder. So for the poppy seed, of course you can buy this in bulk, or I just bought a couple containers from Walmart, and you're just going to grind all this up. You want this to be ground up nice and fine. And then you're going to dump that into a bowl. And this recipe calls for 2 cups of poppy seed, and I had about approximately 2 cups by the time I was finished with this. Once you have all of your poppy seed ground up, you are going to add some orange juice into the saucepan. Well, you're actually going to put your poppy seed into the saucepan, and then you're going to start wetting it with some orange juice. And you want to get it good and wet, but you don't want it to be runny with liquid. So you'll just have to kind of eyeball it. I think I used probably close to a half of a cup for getting it to the consistency that I wanted it to. And then you want to over sweeten this mixture because your dough's not very sweet, and of course poppy seeds are not very sweet. So you want to put a pretty decent amount of sugar in there, and you can just kind of keep tasting it. I want to say I probably added about 4 to 5 tablespoons of sugar. Once you get it to the sweetness that you want, just let that kind of all uh, on a very low heat just warm through, I'd say for about 5 minutes, and then you can remove that from the heat. And take note of the consistency here, how it's really wet, but it's not runny. That's exactly what you want. Okay, for the second filling, we are doing a walnut mixture, and same process. We want to grind it up into more of a fine powder. And I am using this package of walnuts. It's actually exactly 2 cups, which is what you want for your walnut, about 2 to 2.5 cups. Now, I ground this up originally and it turned out really well, but then I started adding in milk and sugar while it was in there. I added in too much milk and then I added in more walnuts, and it kind of became this big gloppy mess. And I mean, it turned out fine, but at the end of the day, it was not ground up as nicely as it would have been if I simply would have ground all the nuts first, which is what I'm going to recommend. Grind all your nuts up first and then transfer that to a separate bowl and then slowly start adding in your milk. Again, you only want to add in enough milk to wet it, but not make it runny. You also want to over sweeten this mixture just like you did the poppy seed mixture. And again, I'd say I probably added 4 to 5 tablespoons, and you can just keep tasting this to get it to the sweetness that you want. You definitely want to taste the sugar in both of these fillings because the fillings themselves are more savory, as well as, the dough is not that sweet. If you are making these fillings ahead like I'm doing, you can just chill them in the refrigerator until you're ready to use them, or you can make the fillings right before you're ready to roll out your dough. It's whatever works better for you. Now, when you know you are ready to start working with your dough, you need to let it sit out from the refrigerator, I'd say at least 30 minutes ahead of time, if not more. It just depends on, if you can slice through it like I just did. And then it's better to work with this in smaller sections. You can just refrigerate the other pieces until you're ready to use them. And then I put a decent amount of flour down on my place where I'm going to roll out the dough. And of course, flour my rolling pin. And you just want to roll this out thinly, quite thin. The thinner, the better, without, of course, making it so thin that it tears on you. So roll it out as thin as you can, and then you want to cut these into 2 to 2.5 inch squares roughly. I've always preferred my Kifles a little more on the petite side. I mean, you can make them bigger and they're still going to taste good, but I just like them smaller. And it's certainly very handy if you would have a pizza roller or something of that nature, and I couldn't find mine, so I just used a knife. But it doesn't have to be exact. You're just going to slice off any jagged edges. and just try to, get as good of a little square out as you can. And then you're just going to put a little small amount of the filling in. If you overpack your filling here, it's going to bust out. It's going to bust through the dough and out the sides. It's just not going to look very pretty. It'll still taste good, but we want it to look nice. So don't overdo the filling. I would say maybe a teaspoon or so to each one, depending the size of your square. And then you're just going to start rolling these up. Start in one corner and kind of push the filling towards whatever corner you're starting in. And just kind of tuck and roll, almost like if you were, making bread when you're rolling up your bread. You're going to kind of tuck it and roll it so it's a nice, neat little I don't know what you would call it, but a nice little roll. And then you're just going to tuck that very last corner in underneath. And then you're going to take your thumb in the middle of it and kind of push that, indent that in. And it's going to give it that nice little, pretty little shape. And then once you have that, you can put it on your cookie sheet and go to the next step. Now you are going to bake these at 350 degrees for 10 to 12 minutes, and you really don't want to try to get them browned. You just want them to be to where they're cooked through. You want them to remain soft. Once these have completely cooled on a wire rack, then you will sprinkle them liberally with powdered sugar. And of course, I did the same thing. I did both batches. I did the poppy seed and the walnut filling. You guys, I really don't know how to explain the flavor of these if you've never had them before. They are so delicious, and they are something that you can eat. You can eat so many of them, which is maybe not a good thing because they're not overly sweet. So you can just enjoy eating one after the other. I highly, highly recommend this. Okay, this next recipe is another staple that I make every year at Christmas, and it is candy cane cookies. So we're going to use one package of sugar cookie mix, and to that we're going to add in a half a stick of melted butter, excuse me, one egg, and a third of a cup of softened cream cheese, and the flour, which is only a half of a cup of all-purpose flour. We're going to mix all of this together, and an egg. Did I say an egg? I don't remember, but yes, we add an egg. Then we're going to mix all of this together, and then this is going to actually form two separate doughs. So one dough, you're just going to keep your regular dough, and the other one, you're going to put in some red food coloring to, of course, give it that candy cane look. And the dough that you do not put any of the red coloring in, you can put in 1.5 teaspoons of peppermint extract, which I normally do, but this year I forgot to get peppermint extract, so that's fine. It's still really good, even if you don't put that in. And then once you have your dough separated out, you're going to start taking little pieces at a time and rolling them into ropes. It's usually easier to work with in smaller little sections of rope as opposed to long, and sometimes the dough will want to crumble on you. Just kind of work with it more, keep pinching it and rolling it to where it really all comes together nicely. And you're just going to twist those little ropes together, and then you're going to make it into a little candy cane shape and put that on your baking sheet. You're going to bake these at 325 degrees for 10 to 12 minutes and then transfer to a rack to cool before serving. Now, my first batch kind of spread out a little bit more than what I would like, and they still tasted perfectly good. Just I don't want them necessarily to spread out quite that much. So what I started to do in between batches was sticking them in the refrigerator for 10 to 15 minutes and then baking them, and that helped them not to spread. And these are such a fun little Christmas cookie to have out. The kids love them. My daughter was going nuts over them, and perfect little addition to your tray of cookies for Santa. We are now going to work on our sugar cutout cookies. So I'm just making some simple frostings to go along with this. I'm just using some powdered sugar, a little bit of milk, vanilla flavoring, and then different colors in each bowl. Just getting that to the consistency that I want. I looked for the ready-made frostings like in the grocery. I couldn't find any, so this will work out perfectly well. So I'm just going to get these done first, and then we will move on to making the actual sugar cookies. So I have decided to cut this recipe in half. So to my mixer, I'm just adding a half a cup of butter and a half a cup of white sugar, and I'm going to mix those two together. After I cream those two together, I'm going to add in a half a teaspoon of vanilla and a quarter teaspoon of almond extract, and one egg. Then I'm going to mix all those together. And then in a separate bowl, I've combined baking powder and salt with the flour, and I did 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a quarter teaspoon of salt, and 1.5 cups of flour. Now, all these recipes are going to be linked below so you can see the exact measurements if you want to make the full recipe. So the dough may look a little crumbly at first, but just keep mixing it until it all comes together. And the great thing about this dough is it does not have to be chilled, so you can immediately roll this out on a floured surface. And you want this dough, you want the cookies to be pretty thick, so closer to a quarter inch than an eighth of an inch. And I apologize for the poor video quality here. My camera died. I had to film from my phone, but then my phone wouldn't upload to my computer. So I'm taking this off of my phone with my camera, if that makes sense. But these cookies turned out amazing. I did not have to refrigerate this dough. It rolled out perfectly. There was nothing sticky. I mean, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. This is absolutely my favorite sugar cookie cutout recipe. I highly, highly recommend this. Now, last but not least, I am making some raspberry almond shortbread thumbprint cookies. And to a bowl, I have added 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour with a quarter teaspoon of salt and just mix that in together. And then I'm going to move that aside and add 1 cup of unsalted butter. Now, my butter was supposed to be cold and diced, but I actually had mine softening on the counter all day, so I just rolled with it. I went in ahead and used my softened butter with 2/3 cup of granulated sugar and mixed that all together well. And now I'm adding in a half a teaspoon of almond extract. I'm going to mix that really well. And then I'm going to shape the dough into about 1 inch balls, about a tablespoon each, and I'm placing them maybe a couple inches apart. And I'm going to use my thumb to put my thumbprint in the cookie, and I kind of spread it out a little bit more. My thumbprint, I don't know if I should have done that. At this point, I was supposed to go ahead and put the jam in the thumbprint and then put it in the refrigerator for 20 minutes and then bake it. Well, as you'll see here, I completely missed that step that I was supposed to add the jam, so I just put my thumbprint and then refrigerated it for 20 minutes and then baked it without the jam and realized after the fact that I should have already added the jam, but I added my jam afterwards, and I actually put it back in the oven for like just 2 minutes to kind of get it a little more melty, but it's fine. It'll be fine. I'll put them in the refrigerator. These turned out absolutely delicious. I had so much fun taking you guys along, making my top 5 favorite cookie recipes for Christmas. I really hope I gave you guys some great inspiration. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I hope you all have a wonderful, safe, Merry Christmas, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.